issue, and then maybe may have been right about it, but
I don't know. For me to answer that would be pure speculation.
BBQ Brusto, cornbread, collard greens, bad bitches, neck bones, all these other things.
Play me a beat. Hopefully here y'all take a seat. I used to rock them cleats, but that was back in the day. I grew up on the south side of San Jose.
What's up, Brandon?
What's up, Luke?
How you doing, man?
Good, man. I can't complain.
You're pretty much the future mayor of San Jose, isn't that right?
That's the plan.
That's what you've been
Long
saying
term.
since like the 7th grade?
6th grade.
6th grade? Yeah, I met you in 7th grade, so I knew ever since the 7th grade you wanted to be mayor.
Just as soon as I realized that basketball wasn't going to work out after I stopped growing at about like 5'7".
I mean, hey, you probably would have made the league if your knee could have held up, right? I mean, that's what you're going to tell your kids at least, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're born and raised in San Jose, California, right?
Yep.
Deeply rooted.
Deeply rooted, yeah. So I would say rooted enough to where like the only trip I ever left San Jose for is like Reno. Up until I left for college, just because I was dead broke.
Yeah, it's tough, right? It's tough in these streets. San Jose's tough to live in,
especially now.
Yeah, recently it's insanely hard to live here, like especially at our age, because like we're not making real money yet, and like it's so expensive to like live here.
That's true, but even if like you are making real money, it's like the type of job you need has to be some type of professional job, or like you have to be.
You need a lot of experience.
Some type of like serious relationship where like you and your other significant person are then gonna move in.
Yes.
And even then, it's like if you guys are both waiters, you kind of not in a good position.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, actually, some servers here are probably making 6 figures.
That's true. Yeah, like the tips could
depends where you're at.
The tips could be good, but just being a server alone, I don't think is really
real tough.
Allow you to last out here unless you have some type of like parental support.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy to me is like most of the people who are our age out here that like I run into, I never meet anyone who just lives independently, like on their own, without the help of either a parent or maybe they're like living with some roommates or something.
Exactly. I know very few people. I know maybe one person in my close circle of friends that's like on his own doing it out here. It's like tough.
It's like extremely tough, man.
Yeah, he doesn't miss work for shit. Like if you miss a paycheck, you can be missing on some bills. Out here.
Yeah, especially if you're like an independent contractor or like
tough.
you don't have the benefits. You're like, man, like I can't really breathe right now. But
yeah, exactly. I lost healthcare on my 20th. Yeah, I lost healthcare on my 25th birthday, and like I'm like, man, I can't go see a doctor right now. If I go down, it's a problem.
Yeah,
because my job doesn't cover that.
We need to reform some of those laws. Like Obama started it off with the Affordable Care Act, but since he hasn't been in office, we've had some repeals of portions of the Affordable Care Act and some other policies also.
Yeah, it's tough. Are there things you would like to change in this city? Being from here your whole entire life, Mayor Morales.
So it's actually that's actually there's definitely things that I'd like to change here, but so this is actually a thing that some people might be confused on. So my like name that I went by going up until I was 18 is Brandon Morales.
Correct.
But since I've turned 18 and actually my whole life I've been Brandon Chaidez.
Okay.
And like a part of that whole issue, I actually wrote about in my book, which you could get on Amazon.
We'll put the link right here.
Yep, exactly. It's called The Tale of Hope. And it's called A Little Boy with a Big Dream.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry. It's called A Little Man with a Big Dream.
A Little Man. Shout out to Andrew.
Dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so pretty much growing up, before I turned 18, I grew up without my biological father in my life. And growing up without my biological father in my life, I did have a stepfather. And his last name was Morales.
Okay.
And so I always considered him my father, and I had a lot of anger and resentment towards my biological father. So I never went by my real last name. And then as I started to get a little bit older, there were 2 things that actually happened. So the first one was that when you're trying to tell the bank my actual last name is this, they're like, well, why is it Morales? And then you start running into legal issues. So part of it is that. But then the other part of it, too, is I was going to college in Santa Barbara. I was working at the bookstore. And while I was working at the bookstore, I got some, I would just have these like deep conversations with my supervisor. He was like 50, 56, 55. Yeah. And one time I was just telling him about like how I grew up without like my biological father and all this. And he told me that he kind of went through something similar. And he said that when he was 24, 25, that he had gotten a call, and the call was from his dad who was on his deathbed. And the dad was like calling. He's like, hey, like, I really want you to come. I want to make things right with you. And he said at that age that he denied it. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this guy. He wasn't part of my life. But now, 30 years later, he looks back on it, and like him talking to me, he's like, Brandon, if there's one thing I would have done differently, it's that I would have gone and talked to him and making it amends of our relationship. So like in hearing that, like you got to take lessons from the older people in your life, right? They've been through more, they've seen it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this guy's lesson and I'm going to try to reconnect with my past. Yeah. And so that's exactly why I started. Like, yeah, it was the legal issues, but then again, I like wanted to be who I actually am, which is Brandon Chaidez. The real you. The real me, yeah.
All right. So your book is autobiographical, or?
It's autobiography. I would say that's the genre.
About your story?
My story. So it's also just motivational too. Like if you read it, like you'll find motivation and like life lessons just for your own life.
I'm sure there's millions of people who grew up just in the same position as you growing up, coming from where you come from.
Oh, absolutely. Like in, San Jose. San Jose is actually the third biggest city in California. Yeah. And, some other cities might get more clout. Yeah, but San Jose is a huge city. We're here. It's very diverse, too. Very. And it depends on, like, the geographic region that you live in the city. And now, more people have gotten pushed out. So, because of the rising cost of housing. But
Tech is everywhere.
Tech is here. Tech's a big contributor.
Silicon Valley, yeah.
I would also say that like Prop 13 is a big issue too.
What is that? I'm uninformed.
So Prop 13, it was a law that was enacted. So in California, what you can do is that you can vote for initiatives. Okay. So you could get an initiative on the ballot, and then people vote, and then if that vote passes, the Constitution is technically amended. The California Constitution is amended. And what that does is it enacts laws that's like based on the majority of what people think. But a lot of people are misinformed about what the actual consequences of voting on those pieces of legislation are. And so we, for Prop 13, the whole point of Prop 13 was to help those who were older, who were like elder, and that were no longer going to be working, maybe weren't collecting that much in pensions. Okay. And so the train of thought was that let's change the property values. So let's change the property values to, and you would have to look it up, but I believe Prop 13 passed in like 1972, I think.
Okay, I'll look it up and put it right here.
Yeah, and so what it does is that it reassessed the property values to the last time that the house was purchased. Okay. And it restricts it from increasing. So it like let's say someone bought property in 1980. They bought that property here in this area for like $250,000. Uh-huh. And so the property value and taxes, the property taxes that are assessed on that can only go up by 1% per year. Okay. And it's locked in even back then at like a 3% or 2% rate. So you run into examples of someone who bought the property way back when might be paying, let's say, $800 to $1,000 on a piece of property annually, whereas someone else who just is trying to buy property is spending $15,000 in property taxes. I see. And so I think what we have to do, in my opinion, why that's a problem is that if you are getting this property tax savings, you are not going to want to move out of your property. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to hold on to that tax savings. And so because of that, property doesn't switch hands. Okay. And people don't want to sell as much because the property values are also going up. Yeah. And so what that causes is just a greater rise in property values.
Yeah. Okay, so I got Prop 13 down now.
Yeah. little lesson.
Yeah, a little lesson.
Prop 13, and obviously that I could go more in depth, and there's some things that I'm probably missing on it too.
Yeah.
But I just think that it has to be reformed if we're gonna really change the property values and allow for people like me and you, like the millennial generation, to get a hold of.
We're in debt.
A piece of pie. Oh yeah, so
all of us.
This is the worst thing about it is like if you're growing up poor in this day and age, you're like double screwed.
Yeah.
So like in order just to make it in the workforce, you need some type of degree.
Exactly.
But in order to get a degree, you have to go to college.
$20,000 a year minimum.
Yeah, that's like if you're in state.
Yeah, I went to a CSU.
Yeah,
like
going
20
to a
Gs.
CSU, and most of the time, people who are growing up like me and you may not have those funds from our parents. They don't have $100,000 sitting around. We're like, let me pay, Brandon's and Luke's
no problem.
education fund.
Just go learn,
so
son.
What that requires for us is to go out and incur these student loans and debt.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times when you're entering into those contracts, you're like 18, 19, maybe 20. You barely understand anything, and you're like,
they don't teach it in school.
Absolutely, yeah. They do not teach it in school. And federal loans are like some of the loans that you can't get rid of through bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And some of those, the interest rates are
insane.
And I really would ask people, to the best of your abilities, try not to go into the private sector for your loans.
Yeah.
Try to stick with the government programs, because with the government programs, you could at least get your debt forgiven through certain things like pay as you earn, or if you want to do the public loan forgiveness. Most of the times, the private sector will be like, oh, your interest rate is only this, but in the long run, it might like spike up because of something you didn't read in the contract, and if you don't have a lawyer,
to read
usually you can't afford, because you're borrowing just to get into school, you're just put in a worse position.
Yeah, it's tough out here. They're saying I think it's like around $200,000 a year, you're still considered middle class in the Bay Area.
Oh yeah,
that's wow. I don't even think I've made $200,000 in my life yet. I'm 26.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that, and that's why like how you were saying, and what I've seen too personally is I don't know. You said one person. I don't know anyone who is our age or even a little bit older who is independently living on their own.
Yeah.
Because I was looking for apartments about like 5 months ago, and through a homie hookup, I found something for $1,600, and it was a small little studio.
Yeah. And
like most places, like that's the hookup. Like that you're not gonna find most places out here. Like for a small studio, are like $2,000 a month.
And you might be sharing it.
And yeah, you just might be sharing it. And so that's why like when you look at the family dynamic too, you see that people who are in our generation tend to be pushing off having kids at an earlier age. Not everyone, some people still manage it.
Yeah.
If they have that assistance from like their parents or like from the state or something, because you can't make it out here just alone, and especially if you're trying to provide for kids without some type of support. But that's why like we're seeing a lot of people who are pushing off having kids. Because they're burdened by debt,
and we don't have a house. We don't have that stable job yet.
Don't have any ownership, and see that's the other thing that's pretty messed up too, is that the hiring and employment. When you look at those factors, a lot of companies are going to the independent contractor model because it's cheaper and they don't have to pay for all of the benefits in the past. And so unless you're able to get that long-term position,
nothing's guaranteed,
and it's like, sure, that might be good like 3 months if you're waiting for bar results, or if you're waiting for something. But if you're looking for something stable, like you're like, hey, I need a car, maybe I need to take out a loan, maybe I don't have the funds, maybe you shouldn't be taking that loan out. But most of the time, if you don't take that loan out, then you don't have a car, and then you can't even make money, and you can't get to work.
It's hard to get around in the Bay without a car.
Which is
it's almost impossible actually to get around. They took my license away for like a month. I had to take the public transportation to work. It took me 3 hours to get to Mountain View every day.
And see, that's the other thing that's just ridiculous is if you've ever been to the East Coast. So like I spent a little bit of time on. I lived in DC, and then I kind of moved, or not moved, but I just went on some travels and trips to New York and like Philadelphia and out there. And their public transportation system is on point because they've had to deal with that problem of
Exactly.
people living in such close quarters for extensive periods of time.
Yeah.
So they're like, this doesn't make sense for us to build all these suburbs
Roads.
and then have everyone just commute, build a mall, have all these parking lots. So what's going to end up having to happen here in this area, and although it might really upset people, is that eminent domain is going to happen, which is people's private properties are probably going to have to be possessed by the government.
Okay.
And in order to rezone and redevelop so that we're building higher and that we have less parking lots and that we have room for public transportation as well, because the natural resources of this area and the current infrastructure is not set up for the amount of people and wear and tear it's taking.
It literally boomed. Like, it was not this crazy here. Like 7 years ago, it was still kind of like people were here. There was a lot of people here, but like it wasn't like to this extent now. Today, there's a ton of people here.
Try just driving on the roads.
Yeah, Highway 85 at 7 in the morning. There's 3 lanes. One of them's carpool. That thing's jam packed all the way through the bay. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, like my past job, I was only technically 15 minutes away with no traffic, but it would take me about an hour to get there.
Easy.
Just because it was bumper to bumper, people getting in car accidents. Yeah. So that's something we definitely got to address going forward.
Yeah, public transportation is not very good here either.
So yeah, we gotta, that bullet train, maybe connecting things. We're supposed to be finishing up BART. That's gonna connect San Francisco.
It's taking forever
to San Jose. That it's supposed to be done.
They originally said 2020.
Yeah,
but I don't see that happening. They just got to Milpitas.
Yeah, so
is that open yet? Do you know if that Milpitas station's open?
I'm not
right
too
across
sure.
the street from Great Mall.
Yeah, no, I haven't taken it. So
last time I checked, it wasn't open. That was like 5 months ago. Maybe it is open by now.
Probably not.
Probably not. It's so slow out here, dude. Everything's so slow.
Yeah, and it's like, part of that process is that when you come up with first you have to come up with funding for these programs. So that's what every single year they try to put on the ballot, some type of measure where like the city could buy bonds from people. And so once they get those bonds sold and that's approved by the voters, they usually raise anywhere from like 960 million to like $1 billion and something. And all of that sounds like a lot. They have to then earmark those funds for certain uses. And so I think the last one that passed was like in 2016 here in San Jose.
Okay.
And it dealt with affordable housing.
Okay.
So they've actually had a couple of projects that were those funds were earmarked for and that they have started to develop. But see, the problem is that the pace of growth and how long it actually takes to get the permitting done, to have the engineers go look at that, to have the funds dispersed. There's also like a bidding process. So they'll take bids and they'll be like, okay, well, this person is doing it for this price, but they are saying they're going to offer this. This person is providing this same service at a cheaper rate. And so like they have to analyze that, and they have to, by laws, like leave that bid process open for like 3 to 6 months or a year. And then so once they finalize that, then they actually have to get into the drafting of like, okay, how is this gonna look, how many units. So that's why these projects take like 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years to actually get completed.
Just to get it's pretty insane. You disappointed the bullet train isn't anything anymore? I'm super sad that's not happening.
I'd heard, I think Gavin Newsom said, our new governor, that wasn't going to be like a priority.
They scrapped it apparently.
I haven't looked into it enough.
It was too expensive.
I know that we had funding there.
Trump made fun of us on Twitter.
He makes fun of a lot of things.
When he made fun of us, though, it hurt. It hurt a lot.
It felt personal.
It did. Yeah, we need that train real bad.
I don't disagree with it. There are other means of transportation though. Like for me, I had a girlfriend who lived in LA, so I'll go down there.
1 hour.
But like even like now, like you could take buses to get down there. It's obviously not the same.
It's not.
And like the airports are definitely impacted. Like if you go to LAX, it's like you're stuck in traffic forever.
It's madness. And
we definitely like transportation is big in this state, and unlike a lot of other states where it's like 1/5 our size, our whole population from like the border of down there into San Diego all the way on up north, going towards Oregon, like in Eureka and all that stuff, is it's just so extensive, and some of these cities along the way produce more wealth than others.
Yes.
And sometimes it just doesn't make sense to have full-on transportation to all these smaller places. But yeah, I think for like the major cities, like going from maybe like
Frisco to LA,
Sacramento to San Francisco, down to maybe you could do a stop in Fresno, which is like starting to grow.
It's a big city,
Like, and then down to LA and like San Diego, or something could make sense.
Yeah, it's just the whole like 45-minute train ride thing would be crazy. I could go work in LA and be home by 7.
Yeah,
like, no problem. I don't.
But see, I think the problem though you would run into is because, especially when it gets up and going, I'm not sure how often those trains would come.
Yeah.
So, maybe if they could get them going every like 15 minutes, like that would
I'm sure they would eventually.
That would be great. But like probably when it first gets started, it's going to be sort of like a higher class that only, you have to pay like $500 for or something like that.
Yeah.
Shit, man. Nasty shit. Oh, look, I stuff a Glock in my bitch pocket. Bitch, stop it. Skinny nigga, big poppy. We put the pedal to metal, I'm a Nicki Whoa. We put the pedal to metal, I'm a Nicki Minaj. 1 deep, baby, can't top it. 5'9" with the stick, I look like Big Poppy. I keep it shoddy. Bottom bitches not harm me. How could I not be? Everything you copy, huh? I kill rock, now I'm sending bullets at your zombies. You never harm me. Niggas try to Vietnam me, but I've been playing with pistols since you watching Toonami. I'm not a rapper, I'm white trash and I'm upper body. Ain't no career, I'm just hoping Madonna adopts me. I get it poppin'. Fuck rock, fuck poppy. I put the stock in. Scheming, I'm not plotting. These niggas stepping to me, end up Gianna Versace, nigga. Perfect.
I'm out here, my boy.
The train.
The train.
I think it's real important for everybody to be connected in California for us to like push forward.
Yeah, I think
I remember at my old job, I used to work on an assembly line at a company fixing scopes, and a lot of the people that worked in the assembly line in this factory came from like Modesto, like even like Fresno. They're driving from like 2-3 hours away just to work this job.
Yeah.
And like if they had a train,
And that's crazy. Yeah. Like, did you mention that too? Is because
they have good benefits. And they can work all the overtime they want.
Exactly. And those guys, they're like, you know what? I don't care if I die on this job. I'm working my 40 hours a day.
Yeah, a day. Yeah, we got RVs parked in the parking lot. People are just sleeping there. And just like, it's crazy.
We've had a rise of that. And like just the thing of commuting too is I've seen with, I was just driving back from LA on like Sunday night leading into Monday. It was last Thursday. I was driving in from LA in the morning, and I left like around 1 to 2, and I had to come up, and I like took a full day's work. But while I was coming up, I was like in the Los Baños area, and it was like bumper to bumper traffic. It was like an hour, hour and a half out that people were commuting to San Jose for.
Yeah.
So. And
they got small roads too, so sometimes it'd just be one way each way for them getting into the big city from where they're from. It's just like traffic's even worse out there. It seems like.
And see, like I don't necessarily think that it's just that people want to commute or drive. It's just that the cost of living for housing is so expensive.
Yeah.
So if we could really up our housing production and development at a quicker pace, we could go to helping people like that with some affordable housing. Like there should be studios in like 1-bedroom apartments for like single people for like $500 to like $800 in the area. There should be, but
probably was at one point.
Yeah, a long time ago.
When my parents were buying the houses, it was real cheap then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not anymore. Those days are over.
All right, Mo, try it out. Come on, man.
Those days are over. So, what else you got going on in life? You just passed. Oh, you haven't passed the bar yet. You just took the bar.
Yeah, so I just took the bar. So the bar, but the bar is a monster. So for any of you hoping to go to law school, I would say.
Where'd you go to law school?
I went to University of Pacific McGeorge School of Law in Sacramento, and they're a great school. They're located there in the capital in Sacramento. They have a lot of good public policy programs and some good professors too. But I would just say if you're going to go to law school, you should really focus on what it is you want to do in the law, and you should make sure that you're passionate about it. I wouldn't say that just because you're like, oh, what do I do? I have a liberal arts degree, I should just go to law school. Because it's a really tough and arduous process, and not everyone makes it out of there. Like even my first year, we probably had, out of our class of like 160 initially, like 20 people dropped. And it's also very expensive, so you're going to be incurring a lot of debt,
more debt.
And it's like it's kind of like the difference between, if you ever heard, I think who was it? Who's that one comedian? Chris Rock. He has this stand up where he's like talking about the difference between rich and wealthy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He's like, rich. He's like, that's Shaq. Shaq is rich. He's like, the guy that pays Shaq is wealthy.
Yeah.
And so like that's how I look at like
Facts.
the difference between debt of like undergrad debt versus grad debt.
True.
Like undergrad debt, like you're rich, but with the grad debt, you're like, man, you got a ton load of debt. Like it's the difference between, even if you go to like a private institution for undergrad, you're looking at probably anywhere from like 20 to like maybe 50,000 walking out with undergrad. With grad school, you're looking at anywhere from like 160 to like 300,000 for people.
Tough.
So that's like owning a piece of property. And I really I promote people, and I think education is key, but you don't always need a degree in order to be educated. You should really push yourself to self-educate.
Yeah,
but
of course.
If you know that a degree is going to help you get to where you want to get, and it's like aligned with your vision, then that's when I believe that you should go for that degree.
What made you start getting into politics? What age did that start? You always have an interest in it from the beginning, or you just said, you know what, I'm gonna pursue this. This is what I want to do.
I kind of just came into it. I would say when I was young, I just grew up poor. I had 4 other siblings and a single mother for most of the time. And she would just try to support us. So I would see how she struggled so much as like a single mother, and without that support. And we had government programs assist us at times. Like we were on housing, we were on food stamps. Yeah. And I saw also how we would get evicted because the landlords would make excuses up of like, oh, the rent was kind of late, or just different things like that. But in reality, it was just like, my mom wasn't the best at like managing 5 kids on her own. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. She has to work, 5 kids. So we were like evicted a couple times. Like my mom had lost her job. So I would just see all these different things happen just because we were poor. And like that sort of drove me to look more at the issues around me and see how I could solve them. I'm like why is she getting laid off? Like why do we have to move out of this house? Why is it so hard? Yeah, why is it so tough? Why don't I have like food? Yeah. Well, how come I can't eat like everyone else? Yeah. And so that's always just like drove me to have sort of a chip on my shoulder of like, when I do things, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make sure I do it right to the best of my abilities. And then just along the way, I had a really good teacher in high school, actually, Mr. Phipps. He was a U.S. history teacher, and I took like the AP class for U.S. history. So I was like, had that chip on my shoulder. I was like, I'm not taking normal history. I'm taking the hardest history. Yeah, and so Mr. Phipps, he was just a great teacher. And he really inspired me, like just hearing him explain it, and like he gave really good lectures, and I would just like start like really reading my book. And I would say that's where I really got like a passion for politics, but it was really just a passion for America. I was like, America could be a pretty messed up place, and we have a lot of times in our history that we shouldn't be proud of, but all those things have led to where we are, and it's like allowed for people like me and you to be where we are in life today. Where we don't have to maybe worry about getting lynched, where we don't have to like worry about like these different things. Like sure, there's racism that's still out there, but like our society has constantly grown over time, and it's based off of those principles that were laid out by these people from like a very, very long time ago. Yeah, and it's always gonna be developing, and there's always gonna be imperfections in the process, but we just have to trust the process. Yeah, and like make sure that if you feel passionate about something, let's have that discourse. Like, let's not lock that up. Let's not try to silence people. Like, even if you don't agree with someone else's opinion, we should allow that to come out, because that's how democracy works.
Yeah, we should be listening. We shouldn't be ignoring. That's what you're saying.
And then, another thing that kind of isn't aligned with that train of thought is that we have allowed corporate greed to really run amok in our country these days. And
do you have any examples?
So just like in 2008, this is a pretty common one that a lot of people have heard of, but maybe some of you haven't. It's called a Supreme Court decision called Citizens United.
Okay, I don't know.
In 2008. And so what the Supreme Court essentially decided is that your ability to give money to campaigns is your freedom of speech under the First Amendment.
Okay.
So what that allowed is for these super PACs to be funded, and it allows an unlimited amount of money to just run into campaign finances.
Okay.
And so because of that, you have these really heavy-hitting companies who are like pharmaceutical companies, oil companies, insurance companies who are able to pretty much handpick candidates. And
they have
in
the
this
power.
Country,
they have the money.
And a lot of people are just uninformed, and you get hit with so much ads. Like, TV sort of dying nowadays, especially for our generation, but a lot of the older people are still plugged into their TVs. They get hit with those ads. They've never heard of the new candidate coming up. And the new candidate who is actually fighting for people, he's not the one getting the funding. It's the guy who's like, hey, corporate, I got you. Insurance companies, do you guys want that cut down? All right, give me campaign financing. They're gonna blow that guy up, or whoever that person is. Yeah. And they're gonna get all of the media attention. And then the person who deserves to win, who has good policies, gets kind of shunned out, unless that person is really just a great speaker and like very charismatic. Then the odds of them winning are very low. And you see it a lot in, like, even here in San Jose. I like was helping out with Propositions 5 and 10 on this last election in November, and what we would see, and like looking at all the polls, is that the ones that actually had ads, so Proposition 10 was one of those, and Proposition 10, it essentially would give cities the discretion to do rent control. Okay. And a lot of ads were being placed against that. That was one of the most highly funded against, and that's the one that lost. And you see this time and again in politics. Whatever has the least amount of funding usually loses.
Oh, that's tough. Politics is real tough. It's pretty amazing that you wanted to get into it.
Yeah, well, I see it as like just an injustice, and I know that like a lot of times like people they lose hope in the process, and I think it's easy to lose hope because you're like, well, my vote doesn't have a say.
I feel that way when I vote.
Why even bother getting educated about it? Like, just let someone else do it. And like I could definitely see where that view comes from, because you've just been taken advantage of so many times. You put some type of hope in something and it never fell through. But if we really do manage to get enough support and you inspire enough people, then everyone together can make a difference. They can change those votes. And
do you think it starts young? Like, do you think the younger voter turnout is getting higher every year? Because I voted for the first time this year in my life.
I think voter turnout is always one of the biggest keys to any election. And even if you look at Obama's election in 2008, like, he was a very like dark horse candidate, someone who wasn't expected to win at all, and he took a majority of all of the young vote, like people who were just like 18 to like under 25, and even when you look at Bernie too, and like the Democratic conventions last year, he was taking a majority of the young vote, and he was actually the populist candidate for the Democratic Party, but he was shunned out due to some shenanigans at the top with the Hillary Clinton campaign. And even where I say like money really influences elections, it's like that media time, the air, the commercials. Even someone who, like, I would consider myself pretty informed. I've worked in Washington. I've, like, studied politics. I've looked at all these things. I even had a bias towards Hillary because that was the candidate that all the money was on, and that was the thing that was getting so much attention.
Yeah.
And not until I really tuned in and started watching Bernie Sanders was like, wow, this guy really like is someone who I would put my vote behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's back, right? Because people are. He said he's going to run again.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of shocking. I don't think any of us thought he was going to do it again.
Yeah. So I think there's that issue that he is a little young, not young. He is a little old,
mature,
nice and ripened, and so that scares some people because we all know.
How old is he?
He's 79.
Isn't Trump like?
So Trump is 75, so he's not extremely older than Trump. 5 years, but 5 years does make a difference, especially as you're older.
The older you are, okay.
He'll
be 84 by the time he gets out of office.
Yeah, and that's like with one term. If he goes 2 terms, he's like he's 88.
Yeah.
But honestly, if he has great energy to him,
he does.
And if he makes it through another campaign trail, and he shows that same energy. I think he has the right policies. There are things to question him on. Like, I know a lot of people get upset because they're like, how practical is universal health care? Where's that funding going to come from? And he makes a lot of other promises. But I think that you can't really always vote on policies because as people get more informed about certain issues, their views on policies change, or at least they should change. But you have to vote on the candidate. At least that's how I see it. Because the candidate, especially being president, you don't know what emergencies are going to arise. But if someone's very calm and collected and they handle the situation well, like they're very well spoken, and they come from a certain background, they're then able to handle that situation adequately.
Mm-hmm.
But if you choose someone who's a little irrational, you don't know how they're going to act when we really need them to act responsibly.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people like us our age, we don't vote because all the candidates, we don't see them representing us at all. Like, none of them come from the same background as me. None of them did what I did. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they don't represent me.
Yeah. No, 100. I think that's something that affects a lot of people. I feel that if you can't relate to someone, you're like, man,
why should I care?
This guy went to a private school. He grew up in this rich, gated community. He has no understanding of the life that I grew up in.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what it's like.
But he's making the decisions for me,
Exactly, yeah. And that's why I challenge, people to go out there and really vote and, understand issues because, and even run for office yourself. Like, if you feel that you're not being represented, and that's sort of ties it back to your original question is that for me, I grew up so poor and disadvantaged, and exactly what you're talking about is that I grew up and I saw that no one's really like me.
Exactly.
No one could understand the struggles that I've been through,
and
I know if I've been through this, there's probably another 100 million people who've
there's probably more of them than
gone through something similar, except they're the ones who are caught up in the system. They're the ones who were involved with drugs or
never made it out.
Had kids, never got the education maybe, and are now not in a place. They're just worried about making their ends meet. They just were barely getting by. And so because I was didn't fall into that same process, and I do understand the issues, I feel like I have an obligation to my society and community to go back and fight for the rights that people are missing out on.
So you have an early favorite for the next presidency?
So for 2020, we're kind of in the same situation the Democrats are that the Republicans were in 2016.
Yeah, who's going to represent them?
We have a ton load of candidates, and you got some favorites. I would say Bernie is probably the favorite just because he has that name recognition and he got pretty close last time. But you also have a lot of candidates that are jumping in that have a good chance. I'm not sure. I think Joe Biden might have also declared.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
I didn't. Don't quote me on that one, but I know he was thinking about it and he might. So I think he would also play a big potential role in being an upset. And he's also a genuine guy too. I've heard him speak in person. This guy's so genuine that I was an intern there at the White House, and we would watch speeches from people from the Obama administration.
Yeah.
And so he was one of the speakers, and he came on stage, and we had a girl who was like in the office of finances who was representing him.
Yeah.
And she pretty much just started her talk, her speech. And she mentioned in her speech that her grandfather had known Joe Biden back in a long time ago, like when he was first running for office, and had like helped him get elected just by like talking to people.
Really?
And so like this guy's so like real. He's like, when he came on stage, he's like, "Is that true?" Like, and he's like, "Call your grandfather."
Call him right
and
now.
like no, it's like straight up in front of a whole crowd of like 300 people.
Dang.
He's just his call talk. He's like, "Hey," he's like, "Is that true? Did you really like represent?" And like,
That's
you
wild.
know, it's just like that's just the type of person he is. So you know, when people are genuine like that, they're gonna make mistakes, but
Yeah.
they're also very just authentic. And especially this day and age with politics, where you get people who's so politically correct and they're just kind of robotic, and you're just like, wow, like, where's the emotion? Like, this guy's gonna be fighting for me, this girl's gonna be fighting for me. I need some more emotion here. And you know, with some of the candidates, that you sort of get that lifelessness, because that's how they've been bred. And you know, after so many interviews, after so many speeches, I guess there's only so many things you could say before you start getting repetitive. But you know, that's where, like, I think Hillary Clinton, she ran into that issue where she seemed very robotic, and she might have cared about the issues, but it didn't show.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
And you know, there are other candidates right now who I hope they kind of seem to be falling into that same stray, and I hope that they don't, because I believe in them. Like you know, I think Cory Booker could be considered one of those. He's a senator from New Jersey.
Okay.
Declared his candidacy. Gets that same thing where he's sort of robotic, but you know, he's a person of color. But he might have grown up in some of it, but he just has done so many interviews that it's like lost him.
Oh, okay.
And he's not very inspirational. And I would say Kamala Harris, I helped her to get elected, and she's our actually senator here in California.
Okay.
And I know she has passion for people, and her parents, they fought like in the civil rights, and
oh, cool.
She's someone who really stands up for especially low-income people on different issues, but she's fallen into that same robotic, like monotone positions, and if she's gonna win, she's gonna have to change that.
The passion, people that want to see the passion.
And it's just like I think that it's like, I think it's there for them, but I just really feel that they start getting in their heads maybe of like, oh, I gotta be too you know, I can't say this, I don't want to anger those people.
They're also up in front of mics every single day.
That's true, but honestly, I think that's like one thing where Trump has, you know, won a lot of votes, is that
he really riled them up.
He was passionate about what he's saying.
I'm rooting for you.
It may not have made sense, and you know, it might have angered a lot of people, but he was at least passionate about what he's saying, and you know, that'll win you votes.
Yeah, it did. It obviously did, because he won. So.
Yeah, but no, I can't see him winning again. I really feel it was more of a Hillary Clinton was just a really bad candidate.
Yeah, it's tough, especially that time period. It was tough to see that happen.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Michelle Obama? Do you think she's gonna run?
Michelle, no, she will not.
You don't
run.
think so?
No, she didn't like to be at the White House. I felt that she was just there because she was supporting like Barack, and she was like, she knew, like, dang, we could get the first African American president here. So
first all black family.
You know, and like, this is something special for this country. So I'm gonna, you know, eat whatever I have to, and just, you know, take it, and then do this for 8 years. But I think that she has no intention.
Do you think she could, though? She'd be a real good candidate?
She would, yeah.
Do you think she could win? I think she could win.
She's very well spoken. She's strong. She has a pretty crazy story too. Have you ever heard her story?
I don't know it too much.
So she grew up in Chicago, and
Southside.
I'm not too sure, but yeah. And so, but she grew up poor. Let's just say that. So there was only one bedroom in their apartment, and the dad and the wife, her mother, shared that room. Okay. And her brother and her shared the living room with a curtain. Huh. And so that's how she grew up. And her dad, he was a worker for like a local factory, and he would just work constantly. The mom was a stay-at-home mom, would like cook food and whatnot, you know, like most people were kind of back in the day.
Yeah, of course.
And so you know, she used that anger and that fuel or whatever that she had in her from growing up so poor, and she ended up graduating at the top of her class at Yale for undergrad, and then she went to Harvard Law School.
And
went to law school, and then she met Obama when she was already done with law school.
Oh, okay.
She was working at a firm. She was 28, and like Obama was also 28, and he was still at school at Harvard, and he was interning in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And met her
Oh, wow.
like that. Yeah, and so yeah, she's very motivational, and she's been through a lot herself, and she made it. I think she'd make a good candidate, but I don't think her heart's in it.
Okay. What about Oprah?
Oprah, she
It would be interesting, right?
she doesn't.
Most powerful woman on earth still?
But
She might be. I don't know.
She doesn't want to run though.
Yeah, there's no way,
She
right?
said it before, and she also has a lot of business interests that I think she doesn't want to offend. And she's doing good for herself.
She's doing very well. Yeah. Good for her.
Yeah.
But
That's life goals right there.
It's just a trend. Everyone's running for president. Like The Rock, he said he was gonna run. Like, how ridiculous. Like, what?
I'm still waiting for Kanye to come out.
I mean, hey, I'm not. Yeah, I was all Kanye 2020, but I don't know anymore. So I think I'm not gonna vote for Kanye anymore.
After the bipolar rant.
Yeah,
no.
I don't want him in the office making decisions for me, but it'd be a little too wild for me.
Yeah, stick to the beats, Kanye.
But yeah, how about you? Would you ever run for presidency? Did you ever see yourself wanting to be in the White House, in that position of power?
So for me, it's not just like the position of power, but I really think it's just the inspiration that you could give back to your society. And I would like to one day put myself in a position where I can run. And so like I think back to it, and like for me, it's like when I look at Obama, like when I was graduating high school, I kind of knew about politics, but I really didn't know that much. And like it was right there when Obama was elected, and I just watched him. I was like, wow, like there's a person of color in office right now.
Yeah.
And as I got older and I started to like read more about him and his policies and stuff, it inspired me to like want to do better. I was like, wow, like this guy was able to come out of these circumstances and he's fighting for people like me, and I want to do that for other people, because no matter how successful you are, like let's say you're a billionaire, it's not really just about your own life. It's not just about you, every single day. Like you only have 3 meals a day. You could only eat, like, even if you're eating the fancy, you could eat lobster with like the Wagyu steak and whatever you want, and but you can only do so much for yourself. And then as a great leader, you inspire others and you delegate tasks to them, and by that way you're able to influence and improve society overall. So that's sort of why I would like to one day run for office.
There you go. It must be pretty hard to like get going. Like anyone can just run for office, right?
You could it's like you become very down-spirited, I think, because when you really look at everyone around you and you look at your circumstances and you realize like, wow, like I don't come from a extremely rich family that could like, fund my campaign. I don't have all of the, all of my buddies aren't super wealthy people who
they come from the same background as you,
who are influential. Yeah. Everyone like
we all
who
grew
I
up
know,
in the same area.
Grew up in a similar circumstance to what I did. And most people that I know like don't know politics. They don't know these things, and so even just to get them to vote for me will probably be like tough, a mission, because they're probably not registered to vote. I'm like, so that's like the starting point. But also too, it's like what inspires me, because there's all this whole group of people who they have rights and they're letting their rights go. They're letting someone else make the decision for them. Yeah. So if I could, be that person that makes the change, that convinces them, it's like I could really get huge policies done that help people like that. So.
Yeah, but step one, right? Just get your name out there.
Step one, well, I learned about it, spent some time in D.C., but like when I started doing research on a lot of politicians, you look at like Bill Clinton, you look at Obama, they all have law degrees. Yeah. Look at the mayor of San Jose, he has a law degree. Okay. And so I use that blueprint. Like I know there are other ways to become a politician, but
knowing laws probably help.
Yeah, because you're going to be making the laws, and you're going to be working with the legislature. So like you want to be able to understand, what you're doing. And as a lawyer too, you actually see it work out. And like, so once a law is made, you know, you have a statute in the books, then it gets interpreted by lawyers, the judges, and then you see it play out in the real world. So just to understand that whole process, I would say it was a good decision to go to law school.
Oh yeah, law school's always good.
Yeah, you increase your earning potential. That's not bad either.
It's always good. More money is always good.
Yeah.
Yeah, more money, more problems. But I mean, if you never had money, now you got money. Life's better now, right?
Yeah. Do you believe that though? More money, more problems.
I've never had money, but
You're like, I don't know. I'll
know.
get back to you though.
Yeah, but I think if I had more money, I think I'd be a lot happier. It seems like I wouldn't be worrying about my next paycheck, my next bill, having to pay bills. You know, this is the first time in my life where like I could pay my bills, no problem. I could pay rent. Yeah. I can get by kind of fine. I have a little bit more money in my bank account every month. Mm-hmm. But, you know, when I was in college, it was, like, real tough. Like, I have no money, no job. It's, like, it's tough. But I don't know. More money, more problems? Depends where you come from, I guess. I don't know. Same set of problems.
Yeah. I think it's, like, when I look at it, I think, you know, everyone has trauma. Everyone has their own issues.
Exactly, yeah.
And, like, so, like, what I would look at it, like, with my life is that, like, yeah, I didn't have a dad. And, like, you know, for some people, they have a dad. But I also had like a really loving mother who like gave me a lot of love and like really believed in me. And some people don't have parents like that where they're like, I love you, you know, I believe in you, go out there and do it. Like although they're there, they might just work and like, okay, here's your food, like at least I'm feeding you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, like it's just everyone has their own issues. And like same thing with money. It's like right now, you know, without money, you might have broke problem issues. Yeah. But then as you start making more money, you're like, man, like I'm really getting taxed by the government.
Yeah, I have to give people a lot of more money.
Yeah. So it's like just, you know, to each is his own with his own problems, man. Yeah. And it's just really trying to live life presently. And that's like a tough thing to do, especially in this day and age when all the media is coming at you so quick with your phone. Yeah. You know, you got your Twitter feeds popping up. Oh, yeah, Twitter's YouTube. Instagram, all that stuff.
It's around you all day, every day.
Yeah, and you know, text messages, you can instantly reach out to people who are like miles away. Whereas in the past, like they didn't have phones. It's just you would go to like home, you know, maybe you'd go check out a couple spots, and like if you saw someone, you saw someone, but you wouldn't really have a way of reaching out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's just it's harder than ever to live presently in the moment, but that's what so many of us need. You know, a lot of us, we have anxiety these days. Mm-hmm. We're always like high sprung. We're always feeling like our minds are just running.
Yeah, a million miles an hour.
And our society does that to us. So it just like to be able to live presently, it'll help you with your life. It'll help you like be more productive because you're just focusing on, let me make this shot. Let me hit this golf ball in. Yeah. Let me do this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like everything's like getting better as time goes on, but it's just a whole new set of problems. So like the whole more money, more problems. I mean, I might have more problems when I get more money. You know?
Yeah, it's just different problems.
Yeah, exactly. Like we didn't have technology like this 10 years ago. Now we have all this technology to make things easy. And now there's a whole new set of problems, a whole new set of anxieties. And so like, more money, more problems. I believe in it now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We'll see though. Yeah. It's almost time to wrap this thing up. You got any words for any kids that want to get started in politics? Anybody who has any interest in politics, how could they get started? Where should they go?
So for anyone who wants to get more involved,
anybody can do this.
Yeah, really. So if anyone, you have a legal right to run for office in this country.
It's your right as a human.
Yeah, it's your right. You know, regardless of your skin tone, your gender, your orientation, your income status. So, you know, if you have a passion, you just got to follow through with that. But like the starting point, I would say, is to really focus on a couple of issues, because those are going to be your driving points, and it'll allow people to connect with you. You know, don't go into it for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. Have your like main issues. Like for me, I have mental health issues, or some of my biggest, that's my biggest concern. Because
it's a big thing, especially today.
Yeah, so like my older brother, he has schizophrenia, and I've seen him struggle with that. I've seen my mom struggle to just try to get him the help he needs, and a lot of the times you can't get the help you need unless someone has been either killed, someone might be harmed, or they're thinking about killing themselves. Yeah. And it's just not a good setup, because
it's very extreme.
We know people are going to commit these crimes. They need the help, but we have no means of getting them that help. So that, and then just the fact that I went to Santa Barbara, and when I was at Santa Barbara, like I was riding down the street on my bike, and like legit, like 20 minutes after, the street was shot up. Yeah. And you know, I know in other places there's shootings, but it's just like in a beach city.
Yeah, at a college.
You know, and someone suffering from these mental health issues that we have to be addressing as a society. So I would just say, if you want to get involved with politics, like, think about what it is that's driving you and start doing some research on it. Like, you know, we all got Google nowadays. And even if you don't got a computer, like, you could take your butt to the library. They got free.
Everything's free there.
Free Wi-Fi, free computers.
Yeah, library card's free, right?
Library card is free.
Free.
So, you know, you have no excuse. And, you know, if you got to take the bus or something, hit us up on this, and I'll get you a bus pass.
Hey, Brandon will get you a bus pass if you need a bus pass.
If you really want to get educated, you know, because we need people fighting for causes. So just educate yourself, you know, go learn about it, and then once you figure out the process, just follow through on the goal.
Don't be quiet. Let people know.
Right? Exactly.
Thanks for coming on the show today, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was great. Episode 1 of the Luke Show. It's over.
Cut.
BBQ blue stove, cornbread, collard greens, bad bitches, neck bones, all these other things. Mississippi riverbanks, in the bricks of the band, practice hot humid summer day. Black girls in they sundresses. Oh no, no, no. Hell nah, it's not sweet. Couple blocks down the street.